A man wakes up alone in a spaceship an unfathomable distance from Earth with no idea who he is or why he is there. I have been excited for this movie since before it was even announced. After the success of the book and the movie The Martian, I was on board with whatever Andy Weir did next. Weir writes sci-fi much like Dan Brown writes thrillers. They are page-turners with unique and thought-provoking ideas written at a level that nearly everyone can enjoy. Weir's follow-up to The Martian was called Artemis, which was fine, but it did not hold a candle to The Martian. But then Project Hail Mary came out, and once again knocked my socks off. The sun is dying, and in order to try to save Earth, a group of astronauts must travel to deep space looking for a cure. I personally find outer space movies to be the most impactful when there are enormous stakes for success. Not much could be more critical than the impending death of 8 billion people because our sun is dying. In The Martian, the character was stranded on Mars, alone, millions of miles from Earth. In Project Hail Mary, the character is stranded alone on a spaceship trillions of miles from Earth. The novel features some really thought-provoking scientific ideas. It goes into detail about these things that may not even be possible, but logically, everything makes sense. The movie skims over most of the hard science, and it skips some of it completely. I would have loved more of those scientific philosophies and seeing more of the consequences of the sun dying out, but it turns out that the scientific explorations aren't really what makes Project Hail Mary special. Project Hail Mary is about Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland stepping up from failed scientist and current middle school science teacher to be a brave explorer, and the world quite literally is resting on his shoulders. He has to learn about himself when he's alone on a spaceship trillions of miles from the nearest human, and most importantly, it's about his relationship with the only thing that can help him save the world. Gosling's character is likable, but it did take me a little bit of time to warm up to him. I was expecting a very serious movie, much like Interstellar, but Gosling was sarcastic and cheesy, and there was quite a bit of humor here, which I wasn't expecting because the story is so dire. Directors Lord and Miller built an incredible world, and they did so without green screen. Some of the shots of outer space and the spaceships felt like miniatures, and they felt a bit stop motion like, and I mean that in the best way possible. This feels like a classic Hollywood movie before everything was all CGI all the time. Of course there is CGI in this movie as well, but it isn't over the top and bombastic, and practical effects were used where possible, and that made a huge difference in the way the story played out. The camera work was a little disorienting at times, which made me feel like I was right there with Grace in space. Now, when there's no gravity, it's hard to know which way is up. Now, I never felt sick, but having the camera move the way it did tells me that I could never be an astronaut. It was a bold choice, but I think the camera movements added a lot to the story. And the flow of the story worked very well. We start on the spaceship, and over the course of the movie, as Grace begins to remember more about his mission and who he is, we get to learn more about that through flashbacks back on Earth. Now, while there are a lot of great characters back on Earth that added weight and emotion to the story, the scenes in space are really what makes the movie special. While this is a science fiction movie that takes place in outer space and it's full of science, it's really going to appeal to a large audience because right under the surface of this hard sci-fi movie is an incredible story of friendship. One of the best friendship stories in recent memory, featuring lead characters so likable with such great chemistry it's hard to watch without a smile on your face. I wanted the movie to show the entire world working together towards a common goal, much like they did in The Martian. And I wanted to hear more of the mind-boggling scientific ideas that made the book so special. But honestly, those things are secondary to the main relationship in the book, which was portrayed as good or better than I could have imagined. Project Hail Mary is a crowd pleaser. You don't have to like sci-fi to enjoy it. Where a movie like Interstellar makes you see the wonder of outer space, you don't really get that here. Because everything else was done so perfectly in Project Hail Mary, I didn't really miss it. This is a good old-fashioned blockbuster that a lot of people are really gonna love, and it features one of the best characters of the decade. Being really far from home. Dark tunnels, fake beards, green planets, orange seatbelts, the sun.